Alright, part two. Now, okay, we just finished dealing with Manet, I mean. Now we're going to go into Degas. Now, again, Manet's, he's a little bit bigger than life. I think some of the people love about him is more on the scandals and how he really pushes the idea of being an artist. I think a lot of people that think of artists think of the way he was, very carefree and promiscuous in some aspects. Degas is going to be in the same kind of boat. There's not very much, and it's Degas, how you say his name, not Degas. Okay. I've had students, one student showed up late and used the excuse, my car wouldn't start because I ran out of degas. And I'm like, okay, very funny. Get into class. So anyway, there's a little short joke for you. Now, his work is very different. All right. Now, he was married with children, so here is his wife and two children and his brother-in-law. Now, in this portrait, they look well-to-do. He's wealthy. He has family money. He's not like Manet where he needs to make money. This time, he has money, and he just decides he wants to be an artist. Now, before he becomes an artist, he has to come to America, and he goes to New Orleans. Now, if you are from New Orleans or have ever been to New Orleans has a huge French scene, and the French communities would love to set up businesses in this time, and because mostly products were cheap here in America. So here he is with his wife and children, and he tells them, he's like, look, I'm going to go to America. I'm going to be there for a while. I don't know how long I'm going to be in America, but I'm going to be there a while. So he basically tells his wife, look, I have plenty of money. She actually came from money as well. And he basically says to her, I'm not that great of a husband, and I'm not that great of a father. How about this? And they basically agree to get a divorce. At this time, there's no such things as divorces. They had them, but it was such a faux pas, especially in religion standpoint. But they get a divorce, but he takes care of his kids, unlike some of the artists that are out there where Manet didn't really take care of his daughter as well as he should have, supposedly. But these little girls, they had everything. And you'll see in the end that he kind of comes back into their life when they get a little bit older. So we'll get to that. But he really wanted to go to America, so he divorces his wife, but sets her up so she's financially secure. Once he gets to New Orleans, now New Orleans has a huge Degas collection. If you ever get a chance to go to New Orleans, they even have a house where this room is inside that house in the Degas Museum. It's right off of the French Quarter. Now, I went there for my honeymoon and I saw this building, and we went into the museum. I love Degas. I think his work is beautiful. And so I decided that we'd go in, and I walk in and I get to the back of the house, and sure enough, they have this full setup exactly the way you see it here. Now, I haven't been there since Katrina, and I imagine the house is still pretty good shape since Katrina, but yeah, the only thing that was missing were the people. The room has exact same color, floor is exactly the same, everything's exactly the same except the people there. There's still a table full of cotton even. Now, that's what they went into. That's what he was focusing on. It was the cotton industry. France at this point is dealing with a lot of cotton merchandise. Mostly fashion. Alright, cotton at this point was very black and white, and a lot of lace too that needed a lot of cotton. So at this point, his family decides to move to New Orleans, where labor was really cheap. They could afford to pay slaves to pick the cotton, and they did. And in their time, they made millions. At this time, that'd be billions of dollars. So they all worked really hard for a few years. You can even see Degas sitting there on the chair reading a newspaper. He's not really, everyone else is working in that room except him. I think he just wanted the free ride to get down there. But anyway, but all those are his uncles and his cousins, and there's his father actually inspecting the cotton with the top hat on at the bottom of the page. Now, but this is what he really loved, okay? Now, he loved the nightlife of Paris, all right? Like I talked about, with electricity becoming more and more the scene, so you see right here, on the left image, there's an opera singer or a singer singing, and even outside there's lanterns that are what we would have nowadays, but back then that was a big deal to have a park that was lit up, and so he's describing that in this painting. Now, if you remember also the the trapeze act, well, here's another trapeze performer at a bar, and I love the angle, how it's offset, and the composition's just beautiful. The way the body's in the corner, and you really see the and it really gives you that sense of lifting and looking up when you're looking straight ahead. And here she is spinning from her teeth at a very high. A very tall height. So anyway, I think this are, now if you notice, one is real crystal clear, so the one on the right is more drawn better, right? Well, the drawing in this is done with chalk pastels. That's his specialty. He draws better than he paints. And the one on the left is done with oil pastels. And for some reason, the chalk versus the oil, some people work better with oil paint, some people work better with chalk. It's just your taste. He's a really good drawer with chalk, and he's an amazing drawer to begin with. But besides the entertaining and the electricity, Absynthe. Okay, this is the first time I've talked about Absynthe. All right, we're going to be talking about Absynthe. It was very big during the Impressionist and Post Impressionist era. Absynthe, it has a lot of glory to it. You cannot buy true Absynthe in America. You have to go to Denmark or Paris or France to get actual Absynthe. What makes Absynthe? Well, Absynthe is a type of a worm oil, and they used it for medicinal purposes. So during the Revolution, when a soldier would get hurt, they would give them Absynthe to drink real fast to give them an hallucinative nature, and then they'd also put Absynthe on the wound, which would also numb. So as you would sew up the wound, the soldier didn't feel as much pain. Well, people that went to war got a taste for this, and bars started to make Absynthe, okay, because it was cheaper than wine and other liquors, and so it became a very hot drink to do, and the elitists drink it, and the poor drunk it. The only downside with it is, like most hallucinogen drugs, it messes with your brain. This also messed with your skin. It made your skin very ashy, and it also made your eyes very bloodshot. All right. Now, here on the left is two people that are Absynthe drinkers. Now, the one on the left, the lady, she has a full glass ready to go. Now, I think if she drinks that, she might be spending the night in the restroom, getting sick all night. But the man next to it, now he looks like an Absynthe drinker. His skin, again, is ashy. Eyes are a little bit bloodshot. But when you look at Absynthe, it's depicted in like the image you see on the right, where it's glorified. And that goes for almost any liquor. Look at Budweiser and Coors, the way they advertise it. They never truly advertise it when someone's smashed. We've all seen someone smashed either on YouTube or on comedy movies. And so you look at that, and why don't they depict that? Well, that's not what drinking's about. It's about the relaxation typically, or the effect, or the allure. And so that's what here with absinthe, that's what they're trying to do, give you that sense of allure. Now, down behind here I have the Green Fairy. It's a type of absinthe drink. It's a drink where they pour absinthe into a special glass that holds the liquor, and then it has a little bit of sugar and water, and they say when you drink it, you might see a green fairy. That's one way. They also say when you drink the absinthe that it has a green hue to it. To me, it looks more like lemonade than it does look like this Gatorade kind of color. I've never seen it that Gatorade color. Now, the American version, they actually do sell it, and it looks like that kind of green, like something you'd put in your car kind of fluid. And I wouldn't drink. It doesn't do anything. It's just alcohol, basically, at that point. Now, the Moulin Rouge, the movie, plays a really heavy part on absinthe. Now, we'll be talking about an artist that is actually a character in the movie Moulin Rouge, and we'll get to that guy shortly. But they depict absinthe in this little video below. Click on it, and you'll see the Green Fairy. Now, here is one of Degas' strongest drawings, in my opinion. I love this drawing, alright? Not because it's just a pretty woman, that helps, but notice, okay, over on the right side where there's a hairbrush, alright? And you look at that arm. Now, to me, this is where I fall in love with Degas' work, and I want you guys to see this. This drawing, it's not the greatest thing in the world. It probably didn't take him too long to do it. Maybe an hour, if that, maybe 30 minutes, okay? It's not a marvel, but I want you to understand how this artist thinks. So when you see his arm, okay, at the bottom of the arm closest to that brush, it's kind of got a dark kind of hue color, alright, darkish brownish blue. And then it moves into the armpit. Notice how it gets a little bit lighter right there and kind of gets this reddish tone. Then it goes down and gets this kind of a green kind of hue that goes into her hip. And then it ends off back into a black. So it starts with a black to brown, to an orange, to green, back into a brown. Okay? Right there is something that is so wonderful about that. He sees the color on her, okay, when she's in this pose, and he sees those colors and he blends them so effortlessly. He has to consciously decide as he's building these layers up where to stop, where to add, where to change colors completely. And that right there, to me, that's a sexy line. I mean, I look at that and I'm like, wow, he had to do all those. And to me, that back is gorgeous. And it's just that line right there. Now, every time I get jazzed up about this piece and I talk about it to the class, and usually the class chuckles a little bit, but to me, it is a really sexy image. Same kind of thing goes into play here, okay? Again, this is another chalk pastel drawing. Now, he loves to do imagery with ballerinas. Now, I believe, and this is a speculation on my part, the ballerinas he tends to focus on are fairly young ballerinas. They're not older ballerinas that are in their teens and 20s. They tend to be like early teens, tweens, so to speak, in a lot of the imagery. Now, what is he focusing on? Well, right here, he's focusing on a class, all right? Now, I believe maybe one of his daughters is in this image. So I think he's trying to connect himself to his daughters with these art forms, and people love his ballerina series. They're just elegant and beautiful. But notice, okay, the girl that's in the front with brunette hair, all right, and her leg is projecting out, and you look at her kneecap. All right. When you look at that, look at the tulle skirt. See how that tulle is resting on top of her kneecap, and you can see that tone of a light skin coming through that white. And then as the skirt moves up to the hip, the tone kind of shifts. but then when you look in between the middle of the skirt, you can actually see where the other leg connects. And so to make tulle and fabric like this seem light and airy, he does it with the greatest of ease. This is really difficult to do, to make that fabric seem like it's resting and floating. And typically fabric has a very heavy look when beginners do it, and he's definitely no beginner. He's a very skilled artist. Probably one of the best drawers that you'll see in this lesson plans. Now, here he's trying to show you the behind the scenes. Okay, so this is like if you got a movie and you watched the movie and then you saw the behind the scenes footage. Instead of seeing the movie, okay, what you see is the ballet. And then here's his imagery of them rehearsing. So you can see all the stage sets in the background. Okay, remember those because that's going to be important for one of the artists next that's coming up. Okay, but this is an oil painting again. Notice how heavy these lines feel. It feels totally different. All right. But then here, okay, now here's a performance that's truly going on, and he's down in the galley, which is a place where the musicians play their instruments. Now, in the galley, it makes sense the way he cropped the image, okay? There's more room on the bottom for the musicians, and then at the foreground, you can really see the instruments coming out. But then look at the background. So see how much lighter it is, and it actually feels like a performance is going on at this moment, the way he set the composition up. All right. Now, when you look at the instrument popping out of the shoulder of the gentleman there, I also want you to remember that shape because that's going to be also important for the next artist as well. Then we go to here, okay? So I showed you the pastel drawing with the ballerinas, and now here's a oil pastel one, and it's just, it's too heavy. It doesn't have that same weight. And this is what I generally see a lot of students who are dealing with fabrics of this nature, that the fabric feels really heavy. And I tell students, I go, it has a kind of a heavy feel to it, and they don't quite understand what I mean. And so when I show them this imagery, they tend to get it at that point. Now, okay, the next one, Toulouse-Lautrec. All right. When I talked about the artist that was in the Moulin Rouge, this is the artist, Toulouse-Lautrec. He is a very interesting gentleman. Now, if you don't know what the Moulin Rouge, click on the video below, and I put one of the extended videos of the Can-Can where it really kind of shows the Moulin. This place was it was not a brothel. Okay, now, did dancers probably do extra things? Sure. But it was mostly an entertainment bar, okay, where people would be entertained with their dancing. But their dancing was provocative. There's no denying that. They were showing off their bloomers, all right? Now, this is the Can-Can, all right, a typical French dance. So I like this video, and so I put that one in. I thought it would kind of depict the Moulin Rouge. Now, he was addicted to the Moulin Rouge. He did all their posters and all their signage, and I think that's why he did it, so he could get into the Moulin Rouge. Because the Moulin Rouge was typically for the elitists. It was a place for the rich to go and spend their money, or some to find wives. Now, here's his uniform. Okay, this is one of his lithographs. All right, he's the first printer you've seen in this series. Now, if you see a true Toulouse-Lautrec, and it's an original, notice the little T-L at the left corner. Okay, if you ever see a Toulouse-Lautrec print, and it's a reproduction or a print, it will be in red if he did it. If it's in black, like you'll see most of them, if it's in a black, then it is done by another print shop after he passed away. I've seen a lot of Toulouse-Lautrec shows. I've only seen 2 in person that he's actually done. Now, why would we only have 2 available? Well, the reason is, these are flyers. These are advertisements that they put up throughout the city. He only kept a few of them, and so they don't always travel with groups of exhibitions. And his shows do travel all around the world because there are a lot of his imagery. If you like his imagery, you can also see a lot of his imagery at World Market. They tend to have a lot of posters with his stuff. So then now we got here Jane Averill. Okay, she is the Nicole Kidman character in the Moulin Rouge. Now here she's doing the can-can on the stage. Again, notice, look at the stage. Remember the backgrounds from Gogh? Also remember the instruments popping over the shoulders of the musicians? So he's literally copying a Gogh piece. Now, he does not consider himself in the same class with Gogh. Actually, Gogh would look down upon him because he wasn't that really successful of an artist. But I think over time, more people have fallen in love with Toulouse because of his... he has a really kind of contemporary style with his imagery. And I think people more resonate with Toulouse than Gogh. But again, he's straight out here copying Gogh's work, but putting his own little twist. So he's piggybacking, like I like to use. Now, when you look at the next piece, the Moulin Rouge, okay, and he's talking about the ball again. Here comes that idea about electricity. All right. Now the Moulin Rouge has electricity, and everybody's going to stay up late, and it's a masquerade ball, is what this is about. So the guy in the front, he's yawning. He's like, "Oh, I'm tired," in the front. And then here's the can-can dancer that's not Jane Averill. It's just a regular can-can dancer dancing for a crowd that are kind of crowding around her. And again, I love those silhouettes, those black silhouettes that he does. It's almost like he cuts out sheets of paper now and puts it down onto the print. And I think that's a really kind of a different style for this time period. Now, he does do paintings, so here Jane Averill is, and I swear the director or the costume designer of the Moulin Rouge looked at this painting, and this painting right here gave her or him the whole set for the movie. When you look at Nicole Kidman's fiery red hair, I know it came from this painting. There's no way around it. Now, if you notice, Toulouse is sitting down. He typically sits down in most compositions because he's a short man. He's not very tall. I heard he's over 5 foot, but not by much, if that. Okay, so he's about 5 foot tall. So he's a short guy. But in all pictures, he tries to make him larger than life. Now here is a typical brand of absinthe. Okay, nothing says like a good time like a little bit of the devil and some death. So here, this is a French brand. Okay, you will never see this brand in America for sale. I just wanted to show you a true logo. Now, when you drink absinthe, okay, I said you had to add sugar and water to absinthe. Okay, now these are two of the things that you typically see if you ever have it in France. The little bottom part of the glass is the part that holds the absinthe. The bartender knows to pour that amount in. You don't want to give somebody too much at too quickly of a time. You want it to kind of settle in their system slowly. Now, you put the sugar on top of the spoon, and then you pour the water through the spoon, and those little slots lets the sugar fall down into the mixture, and then you stir it, and then you drink it. Like I said, every time I've seen it, it's been a very yellowish tone, not a neon green color. Okay, so there we go. So maybe if you ever get a chance to go to Paris or Denmark, both places sell it. Try it out. Now here, okay, this is two types of imagery I like to talk about. I love, again, the silhouettes are really what makes Toulouse's images pop out. In here, I love the way Jane Averill's arm is kind of going into her body, but you can see that little white fingertips and hand forming on her hip. And so I like the way he kind of thinks about his composition, his layout, but then I also like the kind of creepy old guy coming up to her, getting ready to tap her with with his cane, because you know every woman loves to be tapped like that. And so basically he's asking for her entertainment for the night, and you can kind of tell she does not want to be disrupted. Now, if you look at the next image right beside it, the confetti book, you can buy these. They've made reproductions, but in 1970 something, I want to say it was like 74, they reproduced a book, and it was a fairly large book, and of all of Toulouse's imagery in here, and they put it on really good paper. And when people bought it, the book was not completely bound. It had a special bind that you can actually take out the pages in the book. And if you find a full reconditioned, fully every piece is the original that came in the book, it's worth a lot of money. A lot of money. So I always tell students that you never know if you go to like a half-price bookstore and you see one of these. Some people don't know what they have in those stores. So if you see one, I would definitely buy it, because it is worth the extra money if it's from the 70s. If it's the 90s, 2010 version or something like that, they're all mass produced. They're not done the same way. They're not as worth as much, but you might like it, and that might be a good way to take these out of a book and put them in your room. Alrighty, here's the man of the hour, the man that I wanted to get to. Now we are totally after Toulouse-Lautrec, we are kind of leaving the Impressionists, and we'll come back to them with Monet. But we are now going into the Post Impressionists. Now the Post Impressionists, they didn't start with Van Gogh. It's just Van Gogh is pretty much the most known Post Impressionist. All right. Now there's a movie, and there's a link down below. You can click on the video, and they're recreating a whole thing about Van Gogh. They're hand brush stroking each one of the frames for this movie. They've been working on it for 2.5 years. Hopefully it comes out next year. We'll see. I'm dying to see what their idea is about in this movie. But they're focusing on the tail end of his life. They're not doing like a full story from beginning to end, which I wish they would, because it would probably be a better story. Now, Van Gogh, there is nothing happy about Van Gogh, all right? There's no good story at the end. His story is quite sad. And so I will go through it, and hopefully you get a lot out of it. Now, I've done this story a couple times. I've seen students get kind of emotional at the end when they hear about Van Gogh. I'm going to be playing a movie at the end, so of Doctor Who. If you might have seen it if you're a Doctor Who fan. If you've not, and it's the first time you see the Van Gogh Doctor Who, it might tear you up a little bit. And so that always kind of clenches those tears out. Now, notice when you look at Van Gogh's portrait here. His portrait is really kind of interesting. If you look at the beard, the kind of goatee section, the part that covers the mouth, the mustache, and the chin, you look at that and notice how red it is. And then as you move to the back of the beard, it gets a more orangish tone. What is he trying to do? Well, here he's playing with his hue colors, okay? And he's playing with his complements. Now, what's the complement of orange? Blue. What's the complement of red? Green. And so when you look at the face, there's little hints of green, and this makes that face come forward. He is the best at using composition color, and when he does those colors that complement each other, he's the best at it. Okay, besides using his pattern. Now, just to let you know, I'll get to his portrait. This is probably one of his best ones because it was his last one. Also, most people talk about Van Gogh's ear. We will get into that. If you notice on this painting, there's no paint on the ear. That's kind of interesting because he doesn't have one at that time. Now, let's start with this very first piece, okay? Van Gogh was intelligent, highly intelligent, and went to some of the best schools. Now, this is where he started from, okay? This is called Potato Eaters, all right? This is his family. There's his mom and dad sitting at the table, and then his two sisters right there. One sister's back is facing you, the other sister's looking right at you from the dad's left side, okay? Or the right side if you're looking at it, I guess. But, and then, notice there's this I think it's a lady. It's kind of an androgynous character. Could be a man, but I think it's a lady. Okay, and here she comes in with a potato. Now, this is during the portion of the time where it's the potato famine. And I've had students ask me, they're like, what's so bad about the potato famine? So they couldn't eat potatoes. Well, when your livelihood is on potatoes, then that's a big problem, okay? And I tell people today, if we had a corn famine, okay, our country would be in ruin if we could not grow corn. Almost everything you consume has corn in it, okay? To your car, to the drinks that most of you drink, to your food, okay, with starch. Everything has some sense of corn in it. Unless you're a total vegan diet, maybe you might get a lot of corn out of your system, but still, I think you eat a lot of corn. Corn is in almost everything. So I kind of give you that analogy. If we didn't have corn, we would be in a huge depression. So it's kind of the same thing with the potato famine. Now, there were potato farmers, and so his father and mother could not raise Vincent and his son, and his brother, Theo. Now, Theo is the older brother, and he was business savvy, okay? He was a smart gentleman as well. Now, the father had a brother who lived in Paris who had an art gallery, and he decided to send Vincent and Theo up there, and the brother decided that he would teach the boys and send them to school so they can get a proper education. Both of them received a wonderful education, and the uncle basically took care of them. Now, when I talk about the art gallery I'm referring to is the same art gallery that got connected to Manet. Okay, and Manet saw a young Vincent van Gogh and was quite impressed. And so to have someone like Manet in the scene, that is also really kind of neat that Manet and Van Gogh were actually at the same time, but Vincent's much younger at this point. Okay, now also too, notice there's a lantern in this piece. Okay, this lantern is going to be important, okay? You remember me talking a little bit about visual language, and if you haven't heard me say this, or you might have forgotten, visual language is where you can look at an image, and it's the same image replicated in multiple paintings, okay? This lantern is something he uses over and over and over. I don't know if he wants to go back to that time when he was with his parents, and that's why he always uses the same kind of lamp, or if that was just an insanely popular lamp at the time. Either or. Now, let's get into the Starry Night. Starry Night is his most famous piece. If you've never seen it, what rock have you not been hiding under? This piece is everywhere. You couldn't go into a Walmart and go into any home decor, and I guarantee you'll see something with Starry Night on a coffee mug, plate set, shower curtain. I mean, it's everywhere. It's the most reproduced image in the whole art world. What's so magical about the Starry Night? Well, it's where he really takes elaboration. Now, some speculate that this is a lot of an art theory, and it's part of his art movement, showing the whirling winds in here. But to me, okay, I know that Van Gogh loved to drink. And he loved to drink absinthe like most people at that time, and most artists especially. Now, one thing besides Van Gogh, he did lose a sense of him as he started to grow up. We believe he might have been a little bit bipolar in nature. I'm almost 100% sure he was. But another thing is, I also believe he might have been epileptic. because he had a lot of seizures. And so, and anybody, if you might be or know somebody that's epileptic, when those seizures come, they come fast and they come hard, and that is something that messes with your brain. So being bipolar in that, I think that was kind of his biggest problems. Now, if he was alive today, we have medicine and treatments to help him, so he would have gotten the proper help that he needed, but instead he didn't get it. Now, so I believe, besides being with those two scenarios, bipolar and epileptic, here I think he's on this top of this hill painting this scene, and he is drinking absinthe. Now, he didn't drink just straight absinthe. He mixed his absinthe with gin a lot of times, and a lot of people see this tree-like shape on the left side, or they think it's a mountainous kind of shape. It's a tree. It's a juniper tree, and juniper berries make gin. So a lot of people think he's putting a little reference to his gin and absinthe. And like I said, absinthe gives you that hallucinogen feel. You might have hallucinated in your lifetime. I'm not judging you. Some people have not. And when you hallucinate, or you've seen any movies with hallucination, they always have the character who's hallucinating talk about how bright the sky is and how bright the stars and moon is. And if you're really tripping, that you might even see the wind below. And so here's a perfect analysis of the wind blowing. And so you can see that he's hallucinating. Now I'm going to show you another picture named the same title but a little different. Okay, here's Starry Night on the Round. Okay, R-H-O-N-E. And spell that again, R-H-O-N-E. The Round is a river that goes through France, or you can call it the Rhone. Depends on how your accent. Now, here he has two fishermen down at the bottom. It looks like a lady and a man, but it's hard to say. But notice, see how crystal clear everything. It's not exaggerated. It feels a little bit more realistic. Okay, I think he's sober here, and I think here he's on drugs. All right, and most paintings that he's on drugs, you can see that the chaoticness. Okay, so both of them are titled Starry Night. One's Starry Night on the Round. One's just called Starry Night. Now, another version here of Starry Night. This is his sketchbook, okay? Now, I believe this is the original Starry Night. I believe he was on his drugs, sitting there, and he had his little sketchbook, and he started drawing out Starry Night. And it's totally different without the colors, right? But it's still kind of neat. And now, if you'd like to see this sketchbook, the Dallas Museum of Art does own it, and we do show it every so often. It's not a permanent piece that's shown on a regular, so you have to kind of be alert when it comes out. More images in there. Here is his self-portrait, like you've just seen, and also the cafe, and we'll be talking about the cafe shortly here in a minute. Now, here is the Lone Iris piece. Now, the Lone Iris, okay, what is this about? Well, first of all, notice it's very surreal. It's not chaotic, okay? And we know at this point, when he was doing the flower series, he was sober. There was no drugs he was on at that point. All right? Now, when we look at this, why do we know he's not on drugs? Well, at first, Theo wanted to get him help, and so Theo sent him to kind of a doctor institution, and they literally were torturing him inside the institution, and he was writing letters and saying, please get me out of here. And at first he was kind of like, no, you need to be in there. And then he started kind of hurting himself inside this space. Well, then Theo ran into a monk, and basically the monk said, well, we have a place for him to come, and we can have him, and by work and just keeping him clean, he will probably do better. And actually, in actual nature, he did do better there. But as you'll find out at the tail end of it, he started losing it again, and so we'll talk about that. Now, how did he start to lose it here in this piece? Well, what is he saying? Well, here is everything in here is blue, purple irises and marigolds. Now, he's saying in this painting, okay, I'm the white iris. I'm the different one. Now, if you're a gardener and you know anything about irises, when you get a white iris in your mix, you're supposed to pluck it immediately. It's called a mutant iris. What happens with a mutant iris? It contaminates the rest of the other irises, and it puts white specks or white parts into the iris. I actually sometimes think it's quite pretty, but some people find it to be kind of trashy. That's just the elitist gardeners, I guess. So what he's basically saying to the world is, I'm the white iris, and he knows that he's not normal, and he's basically saying he needs to be plucked out of the garden and destroyed. So he's basically saying he needs to leave the world. So he's in a dark place when he did this painting. Now, here's the cafe. Now, if you look at the top of the cafe, there's a little awning and there's a little tiny square. That little square is his gallery, and it is now, or not gallery, but a home, and it is now a museum. So if you ever go to Paris, you can check out the Van Gogh museum, and the cafe is still there. It has not left, and it is a huge tourist place. Just know you're going to pay out the nose for anything you get in there, and it's okay. It's not the best food. But when you look at this cafe, this is where he ate all of his meals. Everything he ate. He worked out a deal with the owner that Van Gogh can go in there, eat, and his brother would pay his bill at the end of the week. Now, the reason why Theo did this is because if Van Gogh had money, he would have spent it on drugs and hurt himself. So this is just a good way to kind of keep him in check. Now, looking at this, okay, so here's the drawing that I showed earlier. And so when you look at the drawing versus the painting, very similar in a lot of ways, but very different at the same time. You can see sometimes a little bit more detail in the drawing versus what you can see in the painting, but I actually like the painting's colors a little bit more. Now, right across the street, that little green window area, that's where his bar is. So let's go into that. So here's his bar. Again, do you see the same kind of patterns in the lights? Well, look, there's also two things. The visual language. Remember potato eaters. The lights are exactly the same. Also notice in this, look at all the lights, and they have those kind of orange, kind of like light effect. Every time he's on Absynthe, you can see that kind of like light shining effect in this painting. So now, also, is the room red and the ceiling green? I don't know. I think that might be a little bit exaggeration, playing with his absent state. And he's actually in the image, too. In the far left corner, there's a little table next to the door. That's him and his girlfriend. Now, his girlfriend is a really pretty lady, but the one thing is she's a prostitute. And they did not. They weren't the best relationship for each other. She actually had a child from a man that was paying her for sex, and Van Gogh was like, "Well, I'll take care of you and your child. There's no problem with that." But the truth is, Van Gogh couldn't take care of her, and he wanted her to quit doing the profession, but she needed to pay her bills, and the truth is he couldn't take care of her. And so, but they did love each other, but they loved each other in more of a physical love. There was no mental compassion towards each other. It was just physical. They just loved each other for who they were, and he was infatuated with her, like most people were. Now, there's another person that's come into play. Okay, this is Madame Chancel. Now, Madame Chancel, how do we know so much about Van Gogh? It's because of her. She's a writer and a poet. They met through mutual friends, and as they met, they became really good friends. Now, he does love her, but he does not love her physically. He loves the way she thinks. And you got to understand, Van Gogh is brilliant. And so he needs to be next to people that is in that same caliber. And she was in the same thing. She really understood him. She also knew how smart he was. And they worked really well together. And so there's tons and tons of letters that she saved, and anything that has to do with documentation on him comes mostly from her. Now here is what I would consider a true absinthe picture. Now it's interesting. There's no oil effects, but there's absinthe in the image. And I'm quite wondering if he's like an alcoholic looking at it going, that sure looks tasty. Maybe if I look at it, I might not want it. Okay, but truth is probably he did take it. There's no denying that. Now, sorry. So in here, okay, it kind of shows the true nature of absinthe, but it's kind of glorified at the same time. Okay. Now here's what happened at the end. Okay, Van Gogh. This is what's so interesting. When he was in the monastery living with the monks, they would have him do a lot of outside pictures. He also did a whole series of wheat fields, which are gorgeous as well. Wheat was a very important. I think that kind of went back to his heritage and his family style of farming. But he would do flowers a lot of times, and his sunflowers are one of the best things that he's done in his collection of work. And people really love the sunflower pieces. They're super strong and super ornate in a lot of ways, but they're not pretty done. They're almost kind of like thrown in a vase, kind of very chaotic in some aspects, which kind of plays with his personality. Now, cutting off the ear, okay? Why did he do it? There's so many speculations, and here I'm about to give you another speculation. My speculation is really quite simple. It's this. I think he was epileptic, all right? And I'm not epileptic, but I've had a lot of friends in my life. Majority of my friends are actually epileptic, which is kind of odd. And each one of them have all said every time a seizure is about to occur that they get this large ringing in their ear. Okay? And I believe the ringing had started before a seizure was about to occur. And he decided to cut off his ear to kind of fix the problem. He thought if he cuts off his ear, then everything will be okay. As we all know, that would not help, okay? And that would only make things worse. And then a lot of people know that he gave the ear to his girlfriend. Well, why did he do that? Well, there's a letter, and Madame Giselle talks about this, is the reason he gave that letter to his girlfriend is he's basically trying to tell her, look, I'm fixed myself. I cut off my ear. I am healed. Okay? He wrote a letter to her saying everything is okay now. And the girlfriend took the letter to the brother, and Theo looked at him and went, okay, I got to get him out of there. He's cutting off his ears. So he makes a picture of himself. Now, he makes a picture of himself every season. So every time the season changes, he makes a new painting. And here, same thing. Cut off his ear. Got to make a painting of it. I really think he's at a dark place at this moment. So his brother takes him and brings him home. And when he's at home, he does okay at first. But I think he starts to lose himself. And one of the things, the brother thought it'd be okay to take him to he had a little country farm where he loved to paint the wheat. And he did a lot more wheat series for a little bit after being out of the monastery. But he would bring these paintings to Theo, and Theo would keep them and try to sell them. But he never sold any of his paintings. I think when you live in a small town and everyone knows, oh look, there's the artist who's crazy, no one will typically buy the work. I think it took a lot longer for his work to sell, and he never sold a piece while he was alive. And I think if he would have, it might have helped him a little bit. But here, because his ego, it basically gave him the look that he was not a good artist. And the truth is, he's quite an amazing artist. Now, you look here. Okay, this is crows in the wheat field. Okay. Now, this moment is really quite sad. He gives this painting to his brother after he creates it, and then him and his brother are supposed to have lunch. Now, there's a lot of theories what happens next in this part. I don't, and it's a new theory about something coming up, and I'll talk about it, but I don't really agree with it. So, he's supposed to eat lunch with his brother, and his brother shows up at the farm, the house, and the next morning, and Van Gogh's nowhere to be found. And then he thinks back on the painting. He goes, well, maybe he's going back out to that same area and paint. Well, what he's doing here in this picture is he's painting his own death. Okay? He puts a revolver to the side of his head, pulls the trigger, and the bullet shoots the gun shoots out the sound that scares off the crows. Okay? So right here he's painting his last picture, what he's going to see. What's his last look? Okay? So this really makes you think. This is a man who's basically thought of every option, and this is the only way out. Even in the painting, he's like, I could have gone this direction, I could have gone this direction, could have gone this direction. Instead, I choose to take this way out, which is sad. It really is sad that that he didn't get the proper help that he needed. Now, when you look at Van Gogh, okay, I want you to look at these paintings. These are all portraits of him in a short amount of time. Now, you can see, even in these paintings at the beginning, how you can see Absynthe slowly took over his system. Even the Absynthe kind of messed up, and as he started to get more and more bipolar, as at the end here, you look and you see the very last image. It's all the styles in one painting. I really do believe that he thought that this is his last portrait, and then he was going to commit suicide. So now, what do people speculate? They also speculate that a group of kids shot him. I don't agree with that. I think he shot himself. But you can look out there and you can see what you see. The only people that know is Theo and him. Now, click on the video below with Doctor Who, and if I haven't gotten you kind of emotional for him, and at least having a little empathy, watch this. If this doesn't bring a tear to your eye, and you don't love Van Gogh even more, I think they did an excellent job of depicting Van Gogh, because honestly, he did not know he was going to be this popular of an artist. All right, he would be shocked in today's standards. But there's more to this as well, because when you watch the making, you can actually see, this is called Making Loving Vincent, and this is how they made the movie. So when you watch this, it's kind of neat, because it talks about how each artist really cares for him and makes a wonderful video. But then this is where it gets a little weird. I'm going to talk about how did he become famous? Well, Van Gogh dies. There's nothing worth more than a dead artist. That's 100% truth. The second part is this. When you look at Van Gogh, okay, you don't hear all the story. Now, this part of the story is this: Theo did have all of his art and kept a good record of it, but he died a month later after Van Gogh died. He did not hurt himself. He caught a fluke kind of pneumonia, and it killed him. All right, so that was a real kind of a fluke accident. So that poor mother lost both of her sons within that short amount of time. Now, when Vincent passed away, they fortunately made a will, and the person that was supposed to get all of his paintings was his brother. Then the next person that was supposed to get all the paintings was his niece. All right. And so the niece got a hold of all of Vincent van Gogh's paintings. Now, Vincent van Gogh's niece was only 6 years old. Now, this 6-year-old, she became one of the wealthiest women in France for a while, because her and the grandmother decided that they would sell Vincent van Gogh's work, and they started getting the right amount of people, told the story about him, and people said that they can really see the pain in Van Gogh's work, and that's where he just started blowing up with his imagery. And as his work became more and more popular, so did the price tags. His niece became one of the biggest contributors to art education and dealing with mental illness and art, okay, with art therapy. She actually set up 2 schools in France and 1 in America for artists, with all the sales of painting, with all the painting sales. And if you want to see the majority of Vincent van Gogh's work, guess what? It's not in the Louvre as much as you would think. There is some pieces in the Louvre, but the really good pieces are in New York City in the Metropolitan Museum. Okay? So, here we go. You can also have your own little action figure of him. Now, let's get into Paul Gauguin. All right? Paul Gauguin is Van Gogh's best friend. Now, just to kind of give you an idea about Paul Gauguin. First of all, he was never trained to be an artist. He was basically highly educated, went to school to become a banker. From there, he decided that he was going to kind of make his career doing banking. And working on earning money. Now, how does he become an artist, and how does he become a famous artist, so to speak? Well, it has to come from knowing Vincent van Gogh. Now, like I said, Vincent van Gogh is a very intelligent man, and they met at probably a bar in the local area. And as I guess their friendship grew, he started experimenting and started playing with art, and then next thing you know, he started finding himself really enjoying it. And this is one of those moments where I kind of talk to students a lot about, make sure whatever you do with your life that you love what you do. And I think at first he probably liked banking and making money, but I think art kind of found a more purpose for him. And as the critics looked at his work, and he did get accepted into the Louvre, and as that moment happened, now he's way more successful than Vincent van Gogh ever was during their lifetimes. And that was okay for Vincent that he was successful, mostly because he knew the right people. And this is where I come to say, sometimes it's not always what you know, it's who you know. And here, it's definitely in that case. All right? So, when you look at his work, his skill level, there's some parts of it that aren't 100%. I'll kind of point out some of the flaws, but some of the flaws actually kind of work in his favor. So, here we go. Now, here is what his work is dominantly about at the beginning. He did a whole series of Amish women, or what they're technically Shakers, but you might commonly know them as Amish because there's some TV shows that kind of play off of this in reality TV. But I want you to understand, okay, Amish, Quakers, and Shakers are all 3 different groups, all right? Amish people can marry, have children. The only thing is that they go back to the basics. They supposedly can't use electricity and modern technologies. So like automobiles, they can't use. They don't have electricity. But I think on some of the reality shows, I've been seeing them using efficient ways for electricity, and that's okay in their system. So they're getting around it a little bit in today's time. But now, and Quakers can get married, and they can also have children as well, but Shakers cannot. You can get married, but you can't have children. So no hanky-pankying in this culture. So there's not very many Shaker communities left, or if any. So they're kind of an anomaly. Now, when Paul Gauguin comes and meets up with these people, one of the things about him, he's a very likable person. Everybody loves Paul Gauguin. And he's a big guy. He's like 6'4", 6'5", and kind of heavier set. So imagine a giant come into your small village, and all he wants to do is see how things are going. So majority of the time, people would just kind of say, please leave, and don't come back. But for him, he's such a likable person that people started accepting him. And this kind of becomes the first reality of art, because he's getting to go to places that most people don't get to go, and his nature is so nice that people are just like, all right, you can stay around. And so he starts painting, and so like here are 3 women that are part of the community. Now I'm curious what their conversation is about, because you see the guy in the back in the far right corner plowing the field, and then here these 3 ladies or 4 ladies are just talking amongst themselves. And so it's kind of interesting. It's a well done painting, but his work is going to change really quickly from these. Now, when he showed this to the salon, they loved it, because it was kind of like a National Geographic. If you've ever seen one of those books, there are typically places that you don't go to, but when you look at the magazine or book, you get to see worlds that you didn't even know existed. And that's kind of how his art is. It's showing worlds that most people don't go to. And this is not too far from Paris. It's a little outside. It's in a small community that he visits. So let's go to the first part. Now, when you look at vision after the sermon, now this is where it gets interesting. Okay, like I said, he wasn't classically trained. He doesn't know all the rules about the Impressionists, and I think that works in his favor, because here, okay, what works did he probably like? Well, he probably really liked the Renaissance, because living in Paris, that's what the work mostly was at that time, inside the salon. So here, he's painting the people praying. Okay, these ladies are all praying, and then there's a lady that's, I guess, being introduced into their culture. Now, what do you do in this culture? Well, when they're doing their sermon, when you're getting initiated, you have to shake the devil out. So that's why they're called shakers. They shake the devil out. So here, he has an angel, Gabriel, reaching over top, and they're shaking the devil out of her. So, and it looks very red and violent. Okay, so he's exaggerating this, but he's using some of Van Gogh's techniques with the complementary colors. So the green of the tree with the red of the ground. Okay, now, when the salon saw this piece, they all of a sudden were like, was there really an angel there? Well, of course there wasn't, but he said he likes angels, and he likes that that it fit this painting, and it feels like there would be an angel there. So, in his opinion, it works. Now, but every artist at this time, they are avoiding the angel. They're avoiding the religious aspects. And here he is, first time out with his work and doing a thesis group of work, and he decides that he's going to put angels in. Now, this is going to be a good thing and a bad thing as this lecture keeps continuing. So now let's go to the next slide. So over here, okay, I just wanted to kind of illustrate the friendship that Van Gogh has with Gauguin. So we've seen this piece just earlier on. Now look at this piece that Paul Gauguin has made and the differences between the two. Now, I'll tell you this right now. Paul Gauguin doesn't like to really drink, and he definitely didn't drink absinthe, okay? So, which is kind of interesting. You have Van Gogh, who's like an absinthe, like, fiend, and then here, he doesn't drink. I think one of the main reasons is he doesn't want to drink it because he's seeing how it's destroying Van Gogh, okay? So now, when you look at also, here's Madame Jinsal, okay? Let's go to the next slide. You can see both of them side by side. Now, when you look at Madame Jinsal, which one do you like better? Some people like Van Gogh's. Some people like Gauguin. So when you look at them, they're very different in their own aspects. Some people say that Van Gogh's is more feminine because Gauguin has more of a 5 o'clock shadow in his. So they are a little different. They both depicted her not as a very pretty woman, but the most important thing to also get from this, all right, is their friendship. All three of them were friends together. And another thing to also understand is Gauguin at this stage, he's copying Van Gogh's work. He's trying to emulate. And this is what I talk about students all the time. It's okay to copy work when you're studying. And here's where he's studying. So he's trying to make his own version of Van Gogh's. And is it as good? Maybe some might agree, maybe some don't. Now, this one is called Yellow Christ, alright? Now, when Yellow Christ was made, this is where the controversy begins, and it actually changes the whole outlook on Paul Gauguin's work. He went to go to the community, did a series of paintings, did about 6 or 7 of them. And when he was doing this series, he brought it to the salon, and the salon loved it. Now, they showed his work, and this is where it got a little hairy. Everything else was really great until this piece, okay? The word yellow is a negative word, okay? And so to put Christ in a negative manner, all right, as calling him yellow, it didn't look good amongst the religions. So he got a lot of flack for it, especially the Catholic faith, really kind of went after it. And they asked him, why'd you paint Jesus yellow? Well, his reason is the wheat field was yellow behind him, and it kind of made sense, all right? Now, also looking at this body, you can tell that when you look at the hands of his skill level, his hands have those kind of lobster claw kind of shapes. That's a very kind of common way to draw hands when you're a beginner. And the reason is he's going off of his mind. When you look at something and draw it, it's a lot easier than going off your mind. And there was no cross there, or probably wasn't. And there's definitely no Jesus figure on that cross. So he had to imagine that. And when you do that as a beginner, you sometimes miss the main details, like digits on a hand, so to speak. And also proportions of bodies. The women's proportions are much better. Even the hands on those women are better than the hands he gave Jesus. It's because he can see them right there. So this whole thing kind of put a bad taste in his mouth. But he did like the adventure. And so at this moment, he decides that he's going to leave Paris. He's tired of the Paris scene, and he wants to go to someplace new. All right? And so he goes to Tahiti. When he gets to Tahiti, he finds these people, these Tahitian tribe. They actually let him be part of the tribe again. And this is, again, he didn't speak their language, didn't know who they really were, and then he started to fall in love with their culture. Now, in this process of time, he visited once and then came back, and he decided to stay for good. The community accepted him, and he never wanted to go back to Paris afterward. He even tried to get Vincent van Gogh to go with him, but Van Gogh's brother Theo decided that it would not be good for Van Gogh to go. I don't know if it would have been good or bad. It's hard to say. But when he was in this time, Van Gogh did kill himself in this period of work. So I think that did hurt him, and also I think
leaving was the best thing, because I don't know if he could have watched Van Gogh destroy himself. So it's one of those moments. Now, so when you look at this piece, okay, first of all, people were like, are the women really nude there? And yes, they are. So at this point, nudity was just a way of life. It wasn't considered sexual. And so he kind of liked that part about the community. The other thing is he liked their gods. So if you look at the left side, you can see one of the god figures. And so he liked their religion, liked their whole personality, and he fit really well with their culture. Now, in this process, he was married with children, and he decided that since he was never coming back, and his wife definitely did not want to go to this rural place, and so he basically divorced her, and but basically said, you can have everything. I don't need it where I'm going. And it's true. He didn't need money, all right? All he asked is his gallery to ship him materials, sometimes clothes, and he became one with these people and did tons of series of works with this. The Dallas Museum of Art has 3 in their public collection right now. Here is one of his more famous pieces. Now, this is one of the women he fell in love with, okay? Now, this young lady, she was very young when they met, and I think he really had a good relationship with her. Now, there was a huge age gap in between these two, but I think she kind of helped him get accepted into the community. She helped him learn the language, and basically helped him be one with the group. And in that process, they fell in love. So if you kind of think about it, it's kind of like an Avatar story in some aspects. Here she is with her sister. Now, again, notice looking at the clothing, okay? They're both wearing clothes in both of these pictures. That's important to understand at this point, because clothing became a main focal point for his work. The people of the community started seeing his clothes, liked his clothes, and so when he would have canvases brought in for his next body of work, they would bring clothes for the community. And the community would get these white clothes, and then they would start to dye them and paint them all different colors. And so here you can see that clearly in the red dress. Now, this red dress that she's wearing started a whole movement that is really popular in Hawaii. That Hawaiian tropic kind of color palette and prints, those became popular at this point. Now here, Spirited Dead is Watching. This is a very sad painting, but it's also a very interesting painting, so to speak. This again is the person he fell in love with. Now here she's on her deathbed. Now when you look at the position that her body's in, a lot of you might have thought it was a very sexualized position, but the truth is there's no sexual situation here. She's in the process of dying. He had gotten smallpox as a young child and survived it, but as this culture's never gotten some diseases that is very common for that time, he supposedly brought it over, and half the community passed away, which was very sad, and his loved one was one of the casualties here. Now, when this piece was made, The Spirited Dead is Watching, it's talking about that person in the back. Now, when this piece was made, there's letters and comments made about this, and they said, how can an angel be any color other than white? So this is the first time race has been put into the idea of religion. And so here he replies, though, she does not believe in the same God as you and I believe in, but the God that she believes in, even though if she was to go to heaven, she would not turn white. She'd probably keep the same skin color that she naturally has. God makes all types of people in different colors, and so should angels be. So here, he kind of brings the idea of color to religion. And so this is a very groundbreaking piece.
Next we have Claude Monet. Now, Claude Monet, what makes him so spectacular? Well, first of all, when you think about his work, I want you to always think, if you see a water scene in his work, then that means it's Claude Monet. He loved to paint the water. Water is his main focal point. I don't know why, but it works for his style. Now, another thing, like I said, like Manet, and to help you remember Manet and Monet, this is one of my little puns I do. Manet has no money. Monet has a lot of money. Okay, his name even has almost money in it. So he's rich. Okay, and if he was alive today, he would be a billionaire in his level. He never has to work a day in his life. So when he gets to paint, so he paints because he wants to paint. So in this work that I'm about to show you, he just paints because he loves to paint. Now, he sells his work really well because he like I've been saying, it's who you know. Okay, he also went to some of the best schools because he came from wealth. Okay, so he's well educated, has great connections. There was no reason why he wouldn't have been successful, and if he wasn't, then he had money to fall back on. So there was no stress. All right. But mostly, if you see water images, just know, and it's kind of blurred a little bit, then it's going to be a Monet. That's kind of its telltale sign during the Impressionists. Now, he's in between the Post and the Impressionists and the Post Impressionists. He lived through both genres, so he did a little bit of this right here is a more Impressionist feel. All right, now this is one of his first paintings. Now, he painted very small canvases. The average size was about 2 foot by, I would say 2 foot by 18 inches, so a foot and a half. 24 by 18 is just kind of his template of size. Now at this point, also paints were, you didn't have to make them like they did in the Romantic period. You didn't have to go to the studio. You could paint right on the scene. And so here he's painting the Yacht Club. This is called the Yacht Club. It is a beautiful painting. And one of the things about it, yeah, you're in an elitist place and you're painting. And so a rich person comes by, sees your painting, and then wants to buy it. That's typically what happened with a lot of his work early on. And then as more and more people found out about him, he became more and more successful. Now, let's go to the next one. Sunrise, or no, this one's Sunset, sorry. The next piece is called Sunrise. Now here you can see it's almost kind of like Seurat's, where it's like speckled, but it's got a little bit more of a push and a pull with the line. It's not so much dot, 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 dot. Okay? And here, he's the master of color and light. He just blends the water where it looks realistic, even when it's quite a little bit different than realism in our minds. Water's really not that blue, and water's sometimes really not that black when he adds black shadows into the water. But it works in his paintings, and he's very fast, very efficient too. Here, this painting, for example, like I said, he he likes to paint a lot, so he paints sometimes in the morning, sometimes he'll go start another painting at lunch, and then sometimes at dinner. When he was in his youth, it was not uncommon for him to do 2 to 3 paintings a day, and he lived for a very long time. So there is a large collection of Monets out there, and you can buy one fairly easy. It's not impossible to find one, and they're really not that expensive for a masterpiece or a master's artwork. Picasso and Monet are pretty much one of the easiest ones to find, and their prices will range depending on their popularity, but 20,000 wouldn't be out of the range to find in a small one of his smaller pieces. I know 20,000. You're like, oh, that's a lot, but when you see some of his paintings that are worth in the millions, that's where you have the issues. Now here we have his boat houses, his boat it's kind of his boat studio. So yeah, boat studio is what we're looking for. Now these are 2 separate artists in this painting. The one on the left is Monet. The one on the right is Manet, okay? And so you can see the 2 difference in their styles. They're best friends, all right? Manet was trying to show his popularity also with him, and he wanted to be Monet. Now, but you can definitely tell which one's better, it might be, in your opinion. Some people might like the Manet's kind of outline color scheme, and some people might like Monet's more realism in his painting. Now, this painting is probably my favorite one out of all of them. I love how the colors of the trees, the water, and how rich that water looks at the bottom, where it has all that black coming through. Now, this is where, when I talk to students about painting water and realism, a lot of students will just grab a variety of blues. There's more to that. Water is a reflective property, so it also absorbs color, all right? And so I think he does an excellent job here of blending the water, and is by far my favorite piece of his. So he's not always in his boat. Maybe he is here, but especially in the next piece I'm about to show you right here, this one, it's outside, and it's a gigantic Mardi Gras scene. But even here, the way the flags move, it has a very water-like feel. Okay. Now, here again, so like I said, he doesn't always do water, but majority of his pieces are. Here's the rail station. Now, in here, the smoke has this kind of lovely feel, and like most artists, when you're there, you might as well paint it. He does have a home that's next to the water in France, but then he also he has multiple homes, and one of the major homes he lives right across is from the Chartres Cathedral, and that's C-H-R-T-S, Chartres Cathedral. Now, most people see this and think the Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris. This is the larger cathedral, Chartres Cathedral. It is a beautiful cathedral. It's the second largest cathedral next to the Vatican. The Vatican's the largest, Chartres, then Notre Dame. He paints this morning, day, and night. Okay? And living across from that, I mean, if you were to live across from this today, the average building house sells for a few $1,000,000, and so this kind of tells you the lifestyle he lives. Okay, now the next piece is also one of the most popular postcards in painting history. More people buy this postcard from the Metropolitan Museum than anywhere. This is his Water Lily series. Now, this painting took him multiple times to paint. He did this for multiple days. At this point in his life, he's older, and his hands are starting to get more arthritic. And story goes that in the morning, his wife would help him set up. He would sit there and he would paint, but he had to have his hand bound, and in between each finger gap, she would put a brush in his hand that he would be using that day, and he would mix his paints, and then he would use those brushes. She'd come at lunch, and they would have lunch together, and then he'd continue painting as much as he wanted. Really a very stress-free life. Here's his water lilies. Now, if you'd like to see these are in New York City at the Metropolitan Museum. They're large, okay? There's about 15 altogether, and when you look at these and how they fit, they really have a nice feel when they're together. Now, I'm only showing you one portion of them. And the way that the Metropolitan Museum has these is a beautiful space. It has, across from these paintings, it's the only thing in the room, and it's all a wonderful wooden floor. It's got wonderful wood molding throughout the place, and then it has across from these paintings is a beautiful stained glass window that is a replication of the Water Lilies series. Now, what I love about these paintings is everything he's done has been very small. Now, why did he go so large in these? Well, the reason is because of his hands. The arthritis was really hurting him, and he was really not feeling well, and this still would allow him to do the details that he wanted with a larger brush that he can hold with the palm of his hand. The color palettes he chooses, again, he's the master of color and light. And you can truly see these in this piece. Now I'm going to show you a close-up. Now as you look at the close-up here, you can see the brush strokes. Now on my projector, this is pretty close to life size in the classroom, but for you guys, I know it's the size of your screen. But this is a fairly large piece, and you can definitely see each little tiny brushstroke for where the flowers are with the orange and red, and how it really quite stands out. If you ever get a chance to go to New York, I would highly recommend seeing the Van Gogh and the Monet exhibit in the Metropolitan Museum. It's probably one of the best parts of New York. Now, last slide. I put down a little puppet with Monet saying au revoir. Okay, so on this now, when you get done watching the video, go take this last quiz. It's going to be over color theory and the Impressionists and Post Impressionists. Alright, remember, look at your syllabus. Make sure you get it in by the time it's due. Alright, see you in the next lecture.